This is the official Slow Tools Kickoff, and it is being moderated by Ariel Wilson. She's a freelance journalist. She primarily works as the editor-in-chief of Edible Manhattan in Brooklyn and is a 2018 Stone Barns Exchange Fellow. She's a co-organizer of the Sustainability Innovation Expo Food Loves Tech and grew up on her family's small farm in western North Carolina.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you everyone who's here at Slow Tools. I am really honored to join you and help advance this conversation and also to be here with some really amazing thinkers. I know we've had the chance today to get to know each other a little bit, so I do want, for people who may have come later in the day and after lunch, to let the panelists introduce themselves, and we might be getting a little repetitious here, but that being said, starting with Anne, let's do some quick intros. If you could just tell us about Green Heron really quickly, elevator pitch, and we'll go down the line.
Actually, I'm a co-owner of Green Heron.
You can use the mic, Anne, if you would.
Co-owner of Green Heron Tools. It's the first company in the world to design and manufacture agriculture and gardening tools for women. We've received 4 USDA Small Business Innovative Research grants to support us, and we've been doing this for 10 years.
Hi, my name is Barry Griffin, and in 2011, after leading 6 capstone projects that were collaborating with Elliot Coleman, I was teaching engineering. I built a makerspace, and following that experience, Elliot university funded, but we took tools up there, 6 of them, and on the spot decided that we should have an organization called Slow Tools. And Elliot called the Stone Barns, and Jill and Jack agreed to host the first Slow Tools conference in 2011, and we've had one every year since. I'm a design engineer. I design machinery, still do, and I've moved from my career of heavy machinery design, mostly marine, into the last 10 years of just working almost exclusively on small farm equipment as an inventor and helper of other people that are doing it.
Thank you. So I'm Horace Clemmons. I'm 75 years old, and I've done everything from walk behind my grandfather's mules and plow the fields and drag a cotton sack down the road and pick cotton. And also started a software business and built it into offices in 7 countries and 400 and something people with a Cuban. And so the tractor that I started and the concepts for the tractor came from building a tractor for Cuba. Some of you may have seen it in the paper. So my partner being Cuban wanted us to do business there, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I said, so after the Bay of Pigs, how do you get Cuba to trust you? And I said, well, we'll build a tractor with all off-the-shelf parts and give them the design. So, and as a result of that, I got invited to one of these sessions. And so I guess I would say I'm a little bit of a zealot and fanatic about open systems, because that's how I made all my money, was with open system software. But in this endeavor, I'm not out to make money. So the project I have going on in Cambodia is an example of what I'd like to achieve. So a Cambodian university has the tractor design. They also have the design that I have the rights to a no-till seeder and a roller crimper, a 2-stage roller crimper. And so that Cambodian university is taking all of those licenses and establishing businesses to build all of that equipment so they can get into agroecology farming in Cambodia and feed their people. So my goal in life is to try to push forward the whole concept of open systems for implements and equipment.
Okay.
I'll take one.
Hi, I'm Michael McGowan, and I started a little company a couple of years ago called Carts and Tools, and to basically get some real hands-on experience with small-scale motors and batteries, lithium batteries, and various other things, sort of related, though, all to small-scale farming. And my background is as a computer engineer. I did that for many years. made a company, did that sort of thing, and then got out of it and went to the hills, that type of thing. Anyway, but I've always had, even in those days, I always had large gardens, tried to feed my family a lot from the gardens and whatnot, and supply good, healthy food for the family. And so at a certain point, about 10 years ago, I got really interested in small-scale tools that, and we'll kind of go into some of this stuff, the conceptual-wise, later. But anyway, so that's been a focus for now a while. And I don't know.
We can transition now. That's actually a really nice transition point. So for the next part of our conversation, I want to treat it as that between you all, as a conversation. So let's pass the mic around a little bit. But maybe, Michael, you want to answer this question for me, and we can all chime in here. But to you, what are slow tools, and why is it important to innovate in the field? What's inspired and motivated you with this work?
Well, I've thought about that a bunch, and I came up with all kinds of complicated answers. But I heard something recently that described it to me in a certain way. It was something I heard on the radio, and it was called frugal design. And I said, oh, that's kind of really hits the mark. Okay, what's kind of differentiates this from many other different practices? And so something that's, anyway, it really just goes to the core of that word. What do you mean by frugal design? And so throughout the world, there are lots of people working on, agricultural solutions, using all kinds of technologies and whatnot. But they don't have necessarily the resources that we find very easily and readily available. And so they come up with some great solutions, okay, that by necessity. And so I think that kind of goes to the core of it. And so if you can really kind of keep that in mind,
Totally.
keep it on track.
Let's just pass the mic on down here.
I think the key thing, so having started work in Cuba where livestock is the primary machinery for farming, I try to, in the things that I've done, I've tried to look at farming not as a vertical farmer that raises this crop that's this size, but think of farmers horizontally, all the way from the guys that are using hand tools all the way to the small tractor and small farmers. So my whole focus has been away from the kinds of farmers that John Deere serves. I tell people quite frequently, my goal is to put John Deere out of business. And again, if we look at it, technology changed. All the big guys that were big guys in technology aren't big guys anymore after open systems occurred. They changed their business. So I think we have to look at an architectural approach and step away from building our own vertical components, but look at how do we adapt an architecture so that our implements are scalable up and down. I mean, today when a farmer buys an implement and he grows a little bit, he has to throw it away and buy another implement. And there's no architectural reason for that, so that's the focus is let's think of farmers horizontally, let's don't think of them vertically, let's establish an architecture, and let's all publish our designs.
Yeah, I think my motivation probably hasn't changed much. I'm interested in two or three things. One is just solving problems. It doesn't matter if it's a hinge on a gate or a drive belt for a machine or some interesting, challenging problem, or maybe opportunity is another word for problem. I've been modeling my father for, a long time. And I was raised on an oyster farm where we did all our own 300-acre oyster farm. We did all our own work, and I just basically ended up modeling him. He was an engineer. My mother was a jazz singer from New Orleans and living on a remote oyster farm in Washington State. And she's in the Jazz Hall of Fame, a Capitol recording artist back in the 40s. And she was very jazzy. So I grew up with this father engineer and mother jazz singer, and I played for her for a few years, a piano player. And so when I got into engineering, I noticed that it seemed like the really good engineering groups I was in that were productive were just like a jazz band in a lot of ways. And that model is we call support the soloist. So if somebody's on a riff or an idea, you support that, because when your turn comes around, you'll be supported. So that's the jazz model, and I sort of combined it with engineering, hired 3 or 4 students, high school kids, to ostensibly work in my shop on our half-acre food garden, but I really wanted to experiment with this idea, the process of this collaborative group supportive process. And the idea, so I got really involved in processes, and that's what I've been focused on ever since. I mean, I love solving gate hinge problems, but the process is what's really interesting to me. And so that experience with those kids where we developed these jazzengineering.org, by the way, is where we document that process. That led to an opportunity to teach engineering at Harvard, where I'm a graduate of, in biology. And the Slow Tools movement really began not with Elliot and me, but with a really strong, powerful woman named Professor Cherry Murray, who was the new dean of the School of Engineering at Harvard. And her vision was to bring in projects for the students outside the university ivory tower. Get out there and get into the fringes and bring in projects that would inspire these kids to look at the outside world and not the inside world. So I did that, and Elliot agreed to mentor 6 of these projects, which we did over a 2-year period. I've mentioned that before. But what's interesting to me is, as a design engineer, and I've been doing it 40 or 45 years on all kinds of projects, is developing the internal processes in the student, let's say, or in the person, or in the group, so that you don't require as many external things. So if you develop a sound internal process that just flows like a jazz group, it's very jazzy, the ideas flow. And then you're not as dependent on the external, bringing in something from Amazon to solve your problem. It comes from the Amazon within, let's say. So I just wanted to read the original Slow Tools mission statement, because until today, I didn't think it would happen. But it has. From what I've heard today, you represent this. And here's, if you bear with me. This is in 2011. We have a .org. We never formed Slow Tools as an organization. Elliot said, just sort of let it happen, you know. Slow Tools org mission is to promote the sustainable and local manufacture of tools, to create a global cooperative for the sharing of tool designs, promote design engineering education in villages and neighborhoods, and develop financial support for the organization. Rationale: human evolution is deeply connected with the creative design and utility of tools. The most important tools provide our food, water, warmth, shelter, and our physical and emotional health and security. All other tools are of secondary importance. And then there's a little bit here about, global. So the mantra is communicate globally, build locally. So my latest thing I'm really focusing on kind of relates to what everyone's been talking about here, is creating the way to manufacture these tools in what you might call community-supported tool making, however that might be. And there are 3 or 4 or 5 models, and I'm going out and interviewing people, as many people as I can, on how can we create farm tool manufacturing, farm tool invention within communities on small scale, so that an educational mission, a nonprofit mission, and a functional or for-profit mission can happen. And this goes directly back to what my students fed back to me. They fed back to me two things after this 2-year jazz engineering makerspace we created. One was that they came up with a great mantra for design, which they call SPIRE, S-P-I-R-E. Sensing or sensuality, play, insight, responsibility, enlightenment. And between each of those is a step of bets and curiosity and questions and failure and that kind of thing. But that's a great mantra to use to figure out where you are in the design process. Do you need more play? Do you need more insight? Have you not accepted the failure that happened? So that's a good model. The other thing they came up with is in personality types for forming groups we were using Myers-Briggs personality testing, and they came up with this, 3 personality types: functionary, missionary, visionary. So within each person and within a group, we all have visionary ideas, we all have certain functional capabilities we have, and we have a certain mission. So in forming groups, they're looking for these personality types. So that's sort of the area I play in tool making, is defining these personalities and trying to get the jazz engineering space going. And until today, I was kind of giving up on slow tools, but now I'm totally re-energized by you all.
What really, really, really inspires me are women farmers. They inspire me every single day to do what I do when it's really hard and I'm really old, okay? I'm not quitting. When I look at our website, and this is what I do when it's a really bad day, I go to that website and I look at what women tell me about how we help them. And I'm a helper, just so you know it. Myers-Briggs even says so. I'm a helper, okay? And I like to help people in any way I can, but I don't like to disempower them. And women have told me stories that only make me feel more empowered. The women in the Midwest, when we ask them about tools and how hard it is, they work every day in the fields. They take care of the equipment, they take care of the kids, and you know what they tell me when we ask them, would tools help them? Oh, we make do. We make do, and they make do damn good, okay? They work really, really hard, and they're really, really proud of the work they do. But you don't see them registered on the ag census, okay? Wife of farmer, okay? But they're out there doing the same work every day. And that empowers me. And when we started our business of growing for my son's farm-to-table restaurant, we got together with a bunch of women, and we were all second, third, fourth, at least fourth career women working on the farms. And we discovered that there were no tools made for women when we did our research throughout the world. That became a social justice issue for me, okay? Not fair, not right. And since my whole work has been helping, I figured we have to help, okay? We have to do something. So a little story, really, really quick, is when we were looking throughout the world for tools for women, and we didn't find any, we were actually interviewing a woman up at Penn State who teaches women's studies up there. And we said, can you help us find some tools for women? Because she worked all over the world too. And she said, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that USDA is putting out an RFA in 2 weeks. And you might want to think about starting a business that addresses this need. Oh, yippee, we said. That sounds really good, because as professional consultants, we had brought $20 million into our local community to help women and children to begin with. So this was just this really, really great opportunity. And then, of course, you know, we thought we were being whispered to, okay? Okay, you need to go for the grant, you need to address this need, and I'm saying I'm too old, and then, you know, all these messages say, no, you're not. And so we actually wrote a grant and started our business. So I kind of think it was some guidance. And what I really like, and women have told us this through all our interviews, all of our discussions with experts, there is just this connection with land, okay? A sacred connection with the dirt, okay? And the other thing we found is women really don't like loud, noisy machines, okay? And that's where we're really different. And that's not true for every woman, because you can't ever generalize to anybody. So it's like we women are doing the slow everything at this point, okay? And it feels darn good, too. So that's what motivates me. So I want to thank all of you women farmers, okay? You give me joy every day.
This is great. I wish we had more mics so we could all hop in together. But the next question I have, I'm going to ask that I know you can all probably name a lot for this, but if we could pick one thing, in the challenges you faced in this field, which one sticks out to you as a recurring one, perhaps the hardest challenge, and we'll go from there. Barry, do you want to go?
The hardest challenge for me personally or for the movement?
For you personally in your work, and we'll let everyone share that.
Funding and shop space. Number one, they're related, and time, of course. Well, I have grandchildren, which is, but having your grandchild in your shop is very powerful for me. So for me, having a shop, finally I have a better one now, and having a community place where people can get together, and the funding to make this happen. There are some students here, young students here from Bristol Aggie High School who made the big trip down here. How do you fund this effort? And I found it's working with young people, 14, 17 years old, that really inspired me to do this project. So it's being able to connect, have continuity from, say, 14 or younger through 75 or more. I think that's really important, how to make that happen. And that's the big challenge. How do you make that happen? How do you create the space and fund it to have this kind of thing just be a daily occurrence?
I have an idea. Can we talk later?
Sure.
I have some good ideas
Any
for
idea?
funding sources.
Good.
One of the things that we've had the most difficulty with is functioning within the American business model. Slow tools, small-scale farming just doesn't fit that, because if you look at the American business model, and we had to go to, through our USDA grants, we had to go to a lot of commercialization workshops and had mentors and everything. Don't look for innovation, don't look for creativity. This is the way it's done in America, okay? You get your product on the market, you grow, and you grow until somebody buys you out or you go public. Now that's it. That was our choice. Are you kidding me? Growing in small ag sustainability, and nobody had any answers for us. That doesn't work. Oh, well, you just want to have a lifestyle business. A what? Okay, it is a lifestyle, but there's no venture capitalists who are going to provide any funding for a lifestyle business. As a matter of fact, we went to angel workshops, we went to all of these places, and we were told the same thing. And, what we said was, okay, we'll figure it out ourselves, because we have to. And we're still in the process, and if any of you have any ideas, we're definitely open, okay? But that is also a social change. Where does America want to put its money, okay? And it requires commitment, and it requires education, and it requires everybody just living their life to show people how it can be done. So hopefully things will be a-changing.
The biggest challenge for me is to get everybody to realize that the space they're in is not the only space in the world. So being old enough to recognize that America from the 40s to the 60s, the whole economic engine was the small farmer. And the farmer was really connected to the rest of the community by the communications technology of the time, by community, by churches, by groups. Here it is today. If you don't communicate on this today, you don't communicate. So the thing I have to do is go back and try to make the local merchant, the family-owned shoe store where there still are a few, the family-owned hardware store where there are a few, the restaurants that are family-owned instead of being fast food, that you're all connected to the farmer. And so if we don't develop the technology that connects everybody in the community, real time, we're going to be put out of business by Amazon. So if we're not better, so the thing I have so much trouble, everybody that runs a business, regardless of what vertical they're in, they're striving so hard to be successful in their vertical, and they don't look beyond their vertical. And we have to become a community again, and we have to be tied together, and we have to have common technology that ties us together. So the problem I have is trying to get each group to realize they're connected.
That's good. You jumped one question, went to the other. So.
Did I? Okay. Well,
Okay.
along the vein of challenges then.
No, anyway, along the line of challenges, well, mine's much more mundane, okay, and in terms of slow tools, and it's the timing, design, and implementation that's tied to natural growing season, okay? So you have these great ideas in the winter, but you can't try them out. And then in the summer, you're too busy because you're doing what you were doing before, you know. Anyway, so it's there, and so the thing is it kind of gets drawn out over a longer cycle, which has benefits, you know, and it's antithetical to the grow big, fast, die thing, you know, but. I think you just have to stay with it, persevere. Okay, that's like I think the mantra of being a farmer probably is, and you just persevere year after year, and so I'm finding that's sort of the biggest challenge right there. There's also the other challenge is that there's a huge number of variables that you're dealing with, because it's across all these different fields, you know, of expertise. You have horticulture, farming, mechanical engineering, in my case, electrical engineering. You have different disciplines. And so you're trying to bring them all together into these products that satisfy really what are fairly small markets, or potentially they could be larger markets. And the thing is that that's a complex task. And so it can involve a lot of steps forward and back, and you know, left turns, going down rabbit holes, all kinds of stuff. And so I oftentimes have to stop and ask myself, okay, what was it I was trying to solve? You know, like what really was going on here? And then I think the other main, well, I just want to bring this up. It's a whole thread. And that is that, to me, one of the most important things going forward is how to start doing a lot of different things at a dramatically, and I mean, it has to be orders of magnitude less energy consumption. So I look at these tasks they're doing out on the, you know, in the fields. And so everything from getting that compost out there, getting it on the field, cultivating, harvesting, watering, you know, just all these different tasks. And we have to be radical in terms of how we start reducing the energy consumption equation on that. And anyway, so I mean, I've spent many years on the periphery of the, you know, climate change world. I used to develop computer systems for climate scientists and whatnot. And so it's been this looming issue sitting out there. And so I think, we're finally starting to see that indeed there's a problem. It's going to be serious, and it's escalating rapidly. And so, but what we haven't really done is the come to Jesus thing about, wow, that means we've really got to change how we do this and how much we use. And so that to me is a challenge.
Sure. And well, I want to use that thought then to transition into our last sort of closing thought before we break it out into question and answers. I think we've used up plenty of time now, but where do you see opportunity for innovation in slow tools? I mean, you could repeat what you just said, right?
Just all over, all over. I mean, there's any number of domains. Like I say, there's all these different expertise. Well, that means there's all these different fields that could use solutions, okay? And so I think collaborative, inspiring, promoting, and furthering, cross-discipline collaborative work is really important in this arena, okay? Then you take all that incredible information and whatnot, and you try and come up with some, like I said earlier, a frugal design, okay? That you whittled it down to its essence, and there you go.
Well, I think the answer to that question is one that we can just look at that was successful. So when the PC was announced in 1981, that changed the computer industry and changed the world radically. And it changed because the design of the system was published and because software architecture was also published and became interoperable components. So once you take a problem and establish an architecture and publish that in the public domain, then you open up the world for creativity. So if you look at all of the creativity in the computer industry came from all over the world, and it continues to expand. And so all we have to do with architecture to get the efficiency you want is to try to get some of the leading universities to own an architecture, publish that architecture, and have everybody build to an architecture.
What was the question again?
Kind of a closing thought about where you see opportunity for innovation.
Okay, well, for innovation. Well, I see it in two areas. One is in education of schools, education from up through college, in the elementary and middle school, high school age. Innovation there in dealing with real problems. That kids don't need to be broadcast calculus. They need to develop calculus in solving a real community problem. Identify and solve a real community problem. Bring a mentor in that, and have a problem that also challenges the mentor, so that the students get to see, just like the father of old and mother of old on the farm, solving real problems. They learn to model the solution of a difficult problem. That's number one. The second one, on a purely horticultural area, is in what I would call digital or some other method of precision planting of complex crop arrangements. I think that monocropping and rows, and this is something I've been working on 3 or 4 years, we developed a machine for very precise planting on a micro scale of 1 inch. If you could plant and farm on 1 square inch and then something else, square inch over here, and then something else over here, if you had a digital system, what would you then plant? And when you think about complex planting, my little company here is called Tapestry Biodiversity Project, which comes from Eliot's tapestry that Jack mentioned. How can we create, or do we need to create, a more robust, complex, yet sustainable horticultural system that can withstand climate change? So when insects change or weather changes, what plants, is there any benefit the way we arrange plants, right? Should we be studying this? And if we do discover something, how would we exploit it in a way that'll feed us? So those are my two areas of interest, and that's where I think we need the innovation in.
I really don't know how to innovate because, I do know how to innovate, but I don't know how to tell anybody how to do it. I think it's really, really hard in small-scale farming because everybody's there has to be strong social networks, but it's still an isolating job when you're farming. So it's really, really hard to get together and say, oh, this is an issue we all have, how are we going to solve it? Not only that, but when you're a beginning farmer, it's pretty hard to have the time and energy to stay afloat, let alone look for innovation. So I think there has to be, I don't think it's here yet. I don't think we have the answer yet, but I think it's coming, and I just want to believe that. So I'm choosing to believe that. It's coming, okay? And I'm hopeful that all of you are going to be part of it.
Great. Horace, no? Okay, I think we're good. I think we want to transition into doing some questions now. Michael, you can hold that. You have the mic. Do we have time, Kristen, for one or two questions? Okay. Anybody have any questions? No?
Wow.
Dead silent?
Let me say one thing.
Yeah.
I would be remiss we talk about slow tools and farm hack and these recent, this issue of agricultural innovation has been going on for a long time. And is John here? John Lee, are you here? Oh, there he is, right in front of me. John, I want to introduce John. John is the president of the Massachusetts Society for the Promotion of Agriculture, formed in 1762. And John Adams was one of the original people, and they funded a study on how to prevent corn borer weevils from affecting corn. And then, so this it still exists, this organization, and supports education and projects in Massachusetts. John's the former manager of Allendale Farm in Brookline. And after that, the Grange. The Grange was, as some of you may know, was formed in 1872, something like that, shortly after the Civil War, to help in the recreate agriculture in the United States after the demise in the Civil War. So the Grange's original mission and the society, Massachusetts Society original mission, were very similar to what we're talking about here. This isn't new. But now I think with, as we've mentioned, with the amount of energy and instability flowing from the fossil fuel and whatever reasons, industrialization, now it's more critical and it's accelerating. Everyone, the scientists are now saying it's accelerating much faster than we thought. So I'm just wanted to point out that this isn't the first time, and there's a lot to be learned from the past on what's been tried and how it worked. So.
Sure. Jack has a question, I think. I'll repeat it. Okay.
I just want to know if people are looking to you for mentorship. Have students. For me? To me? For anyone. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah. You want to stand up? Where are you, Michael? Yeah, you. Oh, okay, there's one. He just called me up out of the blue and said, I'd love to do something in a small tools farming arena. You got anything? I said, it's a lot of work to bring on somebody, and but there should be. We need to step up and do that, okay, and try and inspire other people to, carry the ball after we, get done doing that. And so, communicate, motivate, support, and whatnot. So I do have a number of them. I wish, I could have a bunkhouse out there and, get people going. But I'm encouraged that there's many more people now are starting to, there is a lot more activity in this arena. We just need to communicate out what the benefit is. You see, there's a benefit, and it's not money. And somehow we have to make that, we have to translate that somehow, and what that value is. And so if you're trying to compete on the you'll make more money doing this than something else, we're going to lose, okay? But there are a lot of other dimensions, okay, and which, anyway, so that's one of my thoughts.
A lot of what I'm trying to do is really on an international scale, because if you look at most of the developing countries, they have almost nothing. So from a mentor perspective, a lot of what I'm doing is working with people to start businesses in all these different countries. And so I do have, several things going in several countries where by licensing all the technology. In the developing countries, there's a thing that I learned a long time ago, and a philosophy that I have that says, if you don't allow people in that economy to make money, then your idea is not going to persist. I mean, I've talked to too many research people and people working with grants that have gone into countries and started projects, and I say, well, how many of them are still going? And so the whole thought is, so the people that I look to work with me are young people that I believe can build businesses in their country by me just licensing them the technology at a very, very affordable price. And I say, if we try to address the low end of the market and worry about how we're going to make money first, we will never address the low end of the market. We have to trust if we add value, we will be allowed to make money.
I'm from the Northwest, grew up in an oyster farm. It was in Chinook Nation, Chinook Native American Nation. And I subsequently got to know the Makah tribe. And their tradition is not so much money, but giving gifts. You give a gift, you receive a gift, you give a gift. It's about gift giving. And their culture runs on gift giving. And they have this tradition called a potlatch where everyone gets together and you give things away. It's sometimes the way you move forward religiously and philosophically and soulfully is to give everything away in those societies. So to me, the value is in the giving of the gift. When you can give the gift and then you can receive a gift and give the gift. It's all about gift giving. And I mean, I've been mentoring students and other people and been mentored myself. So all I'm doing is really giving the gift, whether it's money or knowledge or whatever. I feel like I'm just in the flow, and I really can't control the economy or figure it out or think it through, but and turn one thing into another thing. I've done that my whole life. Oh, design this and make $10, or 10,000 or whatever. But it's almost impossible to figure it out. It's too complex. And so I just simply use the idea of, being giving gifts. And now I'm in a smaller farming community. I was in Boston. Now I'm in a small farming community, and this is how people are there. So how they were when I was growing up. It's a giving of gifts. It's not always about money. You got to have money, obviously, but earn a living. But the gifts are more important than the money to me. So.
I just want to mention that everybody talked about collaboration, and collaboration is really, really important. But there's also things that you can look for where you can collaborate that there isn't money exchanged, or in some cases it's small amounts. Like if you're going to go, we worked with some classes at Penn State University. Some were in design, some were in engineering, manufacturing engineering and ergonomics. And didn't always get what we were looking for, but we got lots of stuff as an aside. We went in and we'd present to the student classes, and we'd present the criteria that the women gave us, what they wanted or what they needed, and then ask them to go through a design process. And so in several classes, we had that process working. what we were giving them was an education about small-scale farming, and what they were giving us were their ideas and their creativity in how to solve some of the problems that we identified. In one case, we worked with a group, and it was like $2,000 for having the whole 2 semesters. Another group, they just worked with us. And so there were opportunities. And it's really nice because obviously they're younger students. They were multinational. I think there were like 2 Americans in the classes. And so they brought their tales about how things are done in their country. And that's the kind of collaborative that really feeds upon everybody's ideas and moving from one to the next, and this is how we did it. And everyone learns in that process. Again, you don't always get the outcome or the output that you wanted, but the process is totally worth the effort. And it can be very, very reasonable, and we educate each other.
Do we have time maybe for one more? One more question? Yeah, hand.
When you guys had mentioned perseverance, I wonder if you could share maybe a mistake or a failure to chat. I know sometimes for me it's kind of inspiring to hear people who are so successful in the past.
I have a sculptural boneyard in the back, and which is all the different attempts that completely, that didn't work. Okay, so that happens like very regularly. Okay, but from every, I would say, that's when you learn something. Okay, when it fails, then you can, dig down into it and try and figure out what was it, what was wrong there. When it works, you don't necessarily know why. Okay, you just kind of go with it, And so a lot of your assumptions could be wrong, okay, just some combination of things that cause it to work okay in that case. But that's a constant, iterative process there. And so if you don't deal well with setbacks, then, that might be a look in another direction there.
So my life was shaped by 13 months and 2 days in combat in the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam. And I learned there, if you're alive, you didn't make a mistake. You learned a lesson. And so that being drilled into me, I just say, okay, I'm alive. Let's go on to the next thing.
That's a great answer. My dad was a Marine Corps. Learned a lot from that. No, for me, there's this saying that if there was no failure, there'd be no need for engineering. So, and engineering, by the way, isn't it? The Latin root is the same as ingenious. It's not from engines; it's more from ingenuity. That root comes through Europe. So failure is. We do everything we can. We have in designing. Some of the machines I've worked on are 700 horsepower. They're handling big ropes, handling oil tankers in the open ocean close to sea and 12-foot seas. And the failure and decades of engineering that go into creating a machine like that. How do you size the pinion gear in a machine like that? There's all kinds of standards and FEA, and all this stuff you do to avoid failure is a huge part of engineering failure analysis. And then when is it going to wear out? What's the strength of the chain? How many millions of rotations on the bearing? How is it going to fail? When do you, it's just omnipresent and tomorrow, Aaron Yoder, I think, is here somewhere. Aaron is an expert in failure in agricultural machinery, among other things. Crash, go, boom. And what are the mechanisms of failure? And so obviously we try to avoid failure, but you have to account for that. Fortunately, I've never had major injury on anything I've designed or been a part of. There have been some vessels that have come apart at sea and people were lost. We're not sure why. I was in a job once where a fellow lost his arm in a capstan accident on a fishing pier. So, stuff does happen, and you know, you have to be prepared for it, both as a business with liability and the proper warning labels, and Aaron can weigh in on all this tomorrow, but so there's ways of preventing risk, but failure is what defines engineering, absolutely, and that's why in the SPIRE model, you know, sensing, play, insight, responsibility, enlightenment, the step between responsible action based on our insight is failure, and your acceptance of failure leads to enlightenment. And without the acceptance of failure, a mechanism to accept failure, you continually spin in the responsibility and insight phase, trying to just figure out how you could make it better instead of just accepting the failure and moving on, going back to the beginning of the cycle. So failure is the big trap, the big pitfall, but also the pivotal stone across the river to move ahead, because we're all going to fail in some level. So this is what I love about jazz, you see. When you hit a wrong note in jazz, I don't think it's ever killed anybody, but you get to practice. You get to practice hitting the wrong note. Oh, that was cool. So, whatever. Failure-free music.
Whatever, if it doesn't kill you, it only made you stronger. All right? And that's my bottom line in everything. I don't worry. My question, I say, did anybody die? The answer is no. We're good. I like it simple.
Are you in the medical field?
Yes.
That's what my son says too.
I think we'll wrap it up then. Thank you, everyone, for your questions, and thanks to our panelists.
I'm not kidding you.